Trump looked Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett dead in the eye and said she could be jailed for speaking out. What she did next left the country stunned and him scrambling. The room wasn't quiet. It never is when Donald Trump walks on stage, flashing cameras, cheering diehards, shouting hecklers, the usual chaos of a televised town hall, this one in Tulsa, Oklahoma. But tonight wasn't going to be typical. Everyone could feel it. The tension wasn't in what had been said, but what was coming. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett sat 2 seats from the edge of the panel. Calm, composed, focused. She adjusted. Her blazer folded her notes and locked eyes with Trump. She hadn't come to play safe. And the producers knew it. They just didn't know how fast things would spiral. The moderator, Congressman Reynolds, tried to keep it civil. Reynolds, Congresswoman Crockett, do you believe the former president's indictments compromise his ability to lead? No hesitation. Crockett, I believe this man has abused power, dodged accountability, and now pretends to be the victim. Let's stop pretending this is normal. Applause. Groans. A sharp mix of reactions. Trump leaned in, smirking. Trump, oh please. You've been trying to lock me up since day one. Maybe it's your turn. How about that? Gasps. Nervous laughter. Shouted boos. Even the moderator flinched. Jasmine didn't blink. Then she sat up straighter. Crockett measured. You just threatened to jail a sitting congresswoman for doing her job on live television. Trump, grinning. You run your mouth. Don't be surprised when someone comes knocking. Flicker crossed his face. A crack in the mask. Jasmine's jaw tightened, but her voice didn't rise. She didn't flinch. Crockett, that's what dictators say when they're scared of dissent. You don't scare me. And you damn sure don't silence me. That line hit like thunder. The moderator tried to cut in. Let's move on. But nobody heard him. The audience was stunned. The internet was already igniting. Phones came out. Cameras up. Fingers flying. Someone near the back whispered, "Isn't that illegal?" Another. Did he really just say that? Trump leaned back, smug, trying to look unfazed. But Jasmine never looked away. She didn't move, didn't laugh, didn't back down. 30 seconds later, the producers cut to commercial. Backstage, the tension didn't ease. It boiled. One of Jasmine's aides, Theo Lambert, mid-30s, sneakers, 2 phones always in hand, rushed to her. Theo, you okay? Is she? Nodded once. Crockett, I'm speaking tonight. No waiting. Theo, you sure? Crockett, I'm not letting that stand. Not tonight. Not tomorrow. Not ever. He paused, then pulled out his phone. Theo, let's call the press. But before any podium could be set up, the clip hit social media. Trump's words. The crowd's stunned silence. Jasmine's unflinching stare. It was everywhere. TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. The headline posted by midnight was echoed by anchors. By dawn, Trump threatens Crockett on live TV. What had started as a routine debate became a flashpoint. And it wasn't just about Trump anymore. It was about power, about voice, about who would stand up, and who would stand in the way. By the time Jasmine got back to her hotel, 3 major news stations were calling her campaign office, but her phone wasn't buzzing with reporters. It was family, colleagues, strangers, half the Congressional Black Caucus. The hotel room was quiet except for a humming lamp, and Theo pacing like a storm cloud in motion. Theo, CNN wants a response by sunrise. MSNBC wants you in studio tomorrow. Roland Martin's team says you're top priority. Jasmine sat on the bed, kicked off her heels, rubbed her temples. Crockett, I'm not doing a reaction tour like this is celebrity gossip. He threatened. Me. On national TV. That's not a moment. That's a warning shot at democracy. Theo paused, lowering one phone. Theo. Then say that. Say it now, before they twist it into something else. She stood, grabbed her blazer, looked in the mirror. Crockett. This isn't just about me. This happens every day. To women, to black women, to anyone who challenges power. I'm going to say what they can't ignore. Meanwhile, back at the venue, Trump's team was in cleanup mode. An older aide whispered to a reporter, "It was a joke. Don't make this bigger than it is." But it was bigger. The internet doesn't do cleanup. It only amplifies. On TikTok, a teenager in Baltimore had already stitched together the clip, side by side, with past Trump outbursts. "Watch this," she said. "This is what power tries to do when it's scared of being held accountable." And the views kept climbing every time a black woman checks him, someone said, pointing at the screen. He either mocks them or threatens them. On Twitter, the trending topic shifted fast. "Lock her up," hijacked by Trump loyalists, surged briefly. But the counterpunch came like a wave. "Stand with Crockett. Protect black women. This is what power does." And behind the hashtags, real people were watching. In Dallas, retired educator Marianne Fields sat at her kitchen table, coffee in hand, her granddaughter beside her, both staring at the clip on Marianne's tablet. "Marianne, you know why she didn't flinch?" Her granddaughter shook her head, eyes wide. Marianne, soft, certain. "Because she's dealt with this since she was 12, maybe earlier." The girl looked confused. "Granddaughter, but he can't actually arrest her, right?" Marianne gave her a look, gentle but knowing. "Marianne, baby, it's not about what he can do. It's about what he wants people to believe he can get away with." Back at the hotel, Jasmine Crockett was setting up for a press conference. No glitz, no flashy stage. Just her campaign's vinyl backdrop, 2 flags, and 3 microphones rubber-banded, together by a college intern who'd driven across Dallas to help. A local reporter stepped forward. Reporter: "Congresswoman, are you afraid of retaliation?" Crockett, evenly: "I'm not afraid of speaking the truth. I'm afraid of what happens if we don't." Theo Lambert stood off to the side, arms crossed, eyes scanning the room. He wasn't watching Jasmine. He was watching the watchers. Every face, every glance that lingered too long. Moments like this drew both the brave and the dangerous. Jasmine stepped up to the mic. "Crockett, tonight I was threatened on live television by a man who once held the highest office in this country. And I need you to understand, this wasn't just about me. That threat was a warning to every woman who dares to speak up, to every community that refuses to bow to abuse." She paused. "Not for drama, for clarity. Crockett, firm. I will not be intimidated. I will not apologize for doing my job, and I will not let anyone, no matter how powerful they think they are, rewrite what accountability looks like." Reporters erupted with questions. She answered a few, then stepped back from the podium. The speech wasn't long, but it hit like a hammer. By the time the live stream ended, her campaign's donation link was buckling under traffic. Across town, in the green room of a local news station, a Republican strategist stared at the footage in silence. Strategist, barely whispering, "Damn, she's going to flip the whole table." But Jasmine Crockett wasn't aiming for the table. She was building a new one, and the legs were made of truth, fire, and lived experience. The next morning, Tulsa woke up to headlines no one expected. Trump threatens Congresswoman on live TV. Crockett fires back. While pundits scrambled to dissect tone and intent, Jasmine was already in motion. Her team rented out the third-floor auditorium at the Langston Hughes Community Center on Tulsa's south side. No chandeliers, no teleprompters, fluorescent lights, mismatched chairs, a dusty vending machine humming in the corner. It was real, local, familiar, exactly what she wanted. By 9:05 a.m., the room was full. Reporters, activists, retired teachers, college kids, even folks who didn't care much for politics but had seen the clip and came to hear her. She didn't bring a glam squad, didn't ask for applause, just walked on stage in all black, not for optics, for truth. She took the mic, no stool, no notes. Crockett. I didn't come here to trade sound bites. I came here to tell the truth. She found the eyes of an older woman in the third row wearing an HBCU hoodie, then locked eyes with a teenage boy in the back holding a homemade sign. You speak for us, she nodded. Crockett. Last night I was threatened for holding someone accountable on live TV. And let me be clear, it's not the first threat I've received, but this one came from a former president, a man who's used power not to lead, but to punish. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Crockett, quiet, firm. I've had strangers email me telling me to sit down. I've received letters I wouldn't read aloud to my worst enemy. I've been followed, shouted at, cornered in airports. And every time it's the same reason. I spoke too loud. I asked too many questions. I made someone uncomfortable. She let the silence sit in the room for a long beat. Crockett. But here's the truth. Silence never protected us. It never fed our children. Never kept our daughters safe. Never built anything worth passing down. A few claps. Then more. Then more. It wasn't thunderous. It was solid, like the beginning of something new. Jasmine took a breath, steady and clear. Jasmine. This isn't just about me. It's about what happens when powerful men think they can intimidate women who challenge them, especially black women, especially the ones who don't play polite when it's time to call out injustice. A reporter from the side spoke up. Reporter. Congresswoman, do you consider this an abuse of power? She didn't flinch. Jasmine. I consider it a warning. Not to me, but to every person watching. She scanned the room, her tone sharpened like flint against steel. Jasmine. If we let this kind of intimidation slide, what are we telling? Our daughters? Our young activists? The ones coming up behind us? No one needed to tell her she was trending. Her team didn't have to whisper it. The air in the room had shifted, charged, electric. You could feel it. The world outside was feeling it too. She pulled out her phone, held it up. Read messages aloud. Jasmine, reading. A nurse in Topeka said she stopped speaking up at city council meetings after a politician mocked her online. A teacher in Albuquerque tried to report harassment from a parent, got told to stop causing trouble. She lowered the phone. Jasmine. These are the voices I fight for, not because I'm brave, but because I'm fed up, because someone has to say something first, and today, I'm that someone. The applause didn't come right away. It started small, a few hands, then more, until it rolled through the room, like thunder, not because it was prompted, because it had to happen. After the press conference, there was no green room, no staged exit. Jasmine walked straight to a folding table near the door. No entourage, no buffer. She shook hands, hugged. Strangers. One woman broke down in her arms. A man in a mechanic's uniform said nothing, just handed her a small envelope folded once. Theo caught her by the elevator. "Theo, you just lit the fuse." Jasmine didn't miss a beat. "Jasmine, no. The fuse was always lit. They just finally noticed. What they didn't know, what they couldn't know, was how far the fire would spread." By noon, the press conference was everywhere. Not just sound bites. Full streams, reaction videos, thread breakdowns, memes, mashups, transcripts translated into Spanish, French, and ASL. Clips circulated among teachers, community leaders, organizers. Because what Jasmine had said, it hit deeper than anyone expected. This wasn't about politics anymore. It was about power, about dignity, about the right to take up space and speak truth without fear. On TikTok, a college student in Oakland filmed herself crying while watching the speech. Student, on video. "She said what my mom's been saying for years. But no one listens to my mom. They're listening to her. They have to. Now." On Instagram, a Black veterans group posted an old photo of Jasmine in uniform from her National Guard days, next to the clip from the town hall. Caption: "She's worn the uniform. She's earned the right to speak, and we've got her back." By mid-afternoon, Stand with Crockett had topped 3 million mentions. People weren't just retweeting. They were testifying. Stories poured in. People who'd been silenced, pushed, out-punished for telling the truth. But it wasn't all support. Trump loyalists hit back hard. They flooded threads, calling her dramatic, a race hustler, just another angry Black woman in Congress. Conservative outlets ran headlines. "Crockett plays victim card after Trump joke." But the backlash didn't land like it used to. Because this time, people weren't just reacting to what Trump said. They were responding to how she stood after he said it. At Howard University, Professor Glenn Reese paused his afternoon media ethics lecture. He pulled up the full press conference. Professor Reese: "This is what it looks like when someone controls the story, instead of letting the story control them. She didn't wait to be defined. She showed up with truth and receipts." Meanwhile, Theo was tracking the campaign dashboard from his phone. Donations were up 328% from the day before. They had to call their web host twice just to expand server bandwidth. Small dollar contributions poured in from places they'd never reached before: Utah, Idaho, South Dakota. Jasmine sat in the back corner of a soul food joint in Tulsa's Greenwood district. A plate of collard greens, 2 slices of cornbread. Her phone screen cracked from all the missed calls and texts. She hadn't touched her food. Across from her sat Dr. Dion Hardwick, civil rights organizer, professor, battle-tested. His voice was quiet, but heavy with knowing. "Dr. Hardwick, you've got the country's attention now. You ready for what comes with that?" Jasmine looked up, steady. "Jasmine, I didn't ask for this fight, but I'm not walking away from it." He nodded. "Dr. Hardwick, they're gonna say you're making it about you, that it's identity politics." She smirked, just slightly. "Jasmine, they've been saying that since the first time I opened my mouth. Let them talk. I'll keep walking." Jasmine sipped her tea, the cup warm in her hand. "Jasmine, funny how identity politics only seem to exist when people like me start talking." Across the table, Dr. Hardwick let out a slow, knowing smile. "Dr. Hardwick, they're not used to this kind of heat." Before she could reply, Theo felt a tap on his shoulder near the front counter. A young server, barely out of high school, stood nervously shifting from foot to foot. Server, softly, Sorry. Can I ask her something? Theo gave her a nod and stepped aside. The girl approached the table slowly, eyes wide, voice unsteady. Server, I'm sorry, Can I hug you? Jasmine stood. Jasmine. Of course you can. The hug lasted 4 seconds. But in those 4 seconds, the girl's shoulders dropped. She breathed deeper, steadier, like something heavy had been lifted. Jasmine whispered into her ear. Jasmine. Soft. You keep using your voice, even when they don't want to hear it. Miles away, in a quiet office in suburban Arizona, Susan Morelli sat at her desk, lunch untouched, an independent voter, lifelong Republican. She'd been watching the press conference with mild skepticism, until it wasn't mild anymore. She paused the video, her screen frozen on Jasmine mid-sentence. Susan stared, then whispered to no one in particular. Susan. He crossed the line. She wasn't alone. Editorials began dropping one by one. The Oregonian, Detroit Free Press, Kansas City Star, all condemning Trump's words, not as partisans, but as citizens, as Americans. Legal scholars chimed in on cable panels and legal blogs. This isn't just offensive, it's dangerous. This crosses into intimidation. This undermines the democratic process. By sunset, Jasmine's face wasn't just on the news. It was on projectors in high school classrooms, bulletin boards in union halls, screens in church basements, and TVs in barber shops from Atlanta to Detroit. And it wasn't just what she said, it was how she said it. Unshaken, grounded, like she'd been preparing for this moment her whole life. But Jasmine knew better than to trust the moment. Momentum meant nothing if you didn't build with it. And building meant showing up the next day, and the one after that. The following days were loud. Cable news ran non-stop panels. Op-eds flooded the internet. Radio hosts debated whether Trump's words were just talk or a line crossed in public daylight. It wasn't a clean split, not red versus blue. It ran deeper. Cracks beneath the paint, cutting through race, gender, power, and memory. At Travis's lineup and fade in Jackson, Mississippi, the debate was in full swing. Man in the chair. He didn't say he was gonna arrest her. He was bluffing. She took it too serious. Another man. She's in Congress. You can't be soft. Barber, clipping without looking up. Would he say that to a white man? To Lindsey Graham? Ted Cruz? Silence. Then from the back of the room, older man. She didn't overreact. She just didn't let it slide. Heads nodded. Quiet. Not agreement, but recognition. That same conversation was happening across the country. Over lunch, over steering wheels, over text chains and kitchen tables. And Jasmine's name kept coming up. Back at the Capitol, the air was heavier than usual. Some colleagues averted their eyes. Others offered quick nods in hallways but didn't stop. A few did. Congressman Frank, Waller from Michigan, late 50s, gray goatee, a man known for never showing his hand, caught her outside a budget hearing. Waller, I saw what you did. Took guts. Not everyone here has it. Jasmine, you think I just painted a target on my back? He gave a dry laugh. Waller, you already had one. Now you just made it visible. Back in her DC office, Theo and 2 staffers sat on the floor, surrounded by boxes. Not email. Actual mail. Letters. Cards. Some threatening, most grateful. Theo held up a small pink envelope, carefully unsealed. Theo. Omaha. Handwritten. Looks like a kid. He read the first line aloud. Dear Congresswoman Jasmine, my teacher showed us your video. I want to be like you when I grow up." The room fell quiet. Jasmine stood by the window, watching the sky fade into dusk. Stillness on the outside, a storm of movement underneath. And the question she was asking herself now, the one she'd keep asking: how do you take a spark and make it burn long enough to light the whole damn road? Jasmine unfolded the letter and read aloud. "Thank you for speaking. I want to be like you." She folded it carefully, like something fragile. Jasmine, put that one aside. That evening, she didn't host a press event or live stream. Just a round table, quiet. Basement of a Baltimore community center. Folding chairs, a box of donuts, no speeches, just listening. There were high schoolers, a few pastors, single mothers, and a retired librarian named Brenda, who spoke first. She told them how she once challenged her school board when they tried to ban beloved Brenda. "They said I was too emotional, like that was the problem." Jasmine nodded. "Jasmine, they punish the delivery, so they can ignore the truth." Heads nodded. The mood shifted. A teenager in the back, hoodie up, barely looked up. "Young man, you think that press conference will actually change anything?" Jasmine didn't hesitate. "Jasmine, change doesn't happen because one person speaks. It happens when enough people decide they won't shut up anymore." He didn't say anything, but he didn't stop listening. Across the country, Trump was leaning into his usual line. At a rally in Arkansas, he cracked the same smirk from the town hall. "Trump, she tried to play the victim, but we're the ones being silenced. They silence us," the crowd roared. But in media rooms, the line didn't land like it used to. Fact-checkers were faster. Cable hosts pushed back harder. The old playbook wasn't working the same. In Oregon, a high school debate team ran a mock trial using the town hall footage. They voted 7-2. Trump's words were coercive. Their coach, Miss Darla Kent, played Jasmine's full press conference afterward. "Miss Kent, this is what leadership under pressure looks like. You don't have to agree with her, but you can't deny she stood her ground." In Dallas, Jasmine's mother was watching from the couch, a crocheted blanket on her lap, the same one she'd made when Jasmine graduated law school. She turned to her sister, eyes on the screen. "Marietta. Every time they try to shut her up, she speaks louder. I used to say that mouth would get her in trouble. Now I'm glad I didn't make her quiet down." But Jasmine wasn't chasing approval. She was building pressure, the kind that either cracks the system or forces it to change. She hadn't been home to Shreveport in months. The flight was quiet. The drive, quieter. She cracked the window, let the old air in, familiar corners, empty lots where corner stores used to stand. Sidewalks she once walked with her backpack slipping off one shoulder. Street signs faded, still standing. Her mother's brick house on Douglas Street leaned a little more than it used to. A new AC unit buzzed louder than she remembered. The front door opened before she could knock. Marietta Crockett. Short, broad-shouldered, always, ready with a side-eye or scripture, wrapped her in a hug that said 100 things without a word. Marietta. "'About time you came home, Jasmine. I didn't plan it, just needed to be around people who remember me before the headlines." They sat at the old kitchen table. Same vinyl cloth, same dent from the skillet incident back in '06. Marietta poured tea and pulled a plate of leftover cabbage from the fridge. Marietta. "They still giving you hell?" Jasmine. Soft, tired. "Pretty much. Now they're just louder about it." Her mother studied her face. Marietta. "You scared?" Jasmine didn't answer right away. She stared at her hands, then finally. "Jasmine, I'm not scared of him. I'm scared of what happens if no one calls it out, of the silence that says it's okay. Marietta exhaled deeply, then stood and pulled a shoebox off the counter. Inside, old newspaper clippings, her law school acceptance letter, and death threats from her first campaign. Jasmine hadn't known her mother had kept them. Marietta, just want you to remember where you came from, and what you're walking into. Jasmine held the box in her lap. Jasmine, I remember. I just don't always know if it matters. Her mother tapped the edge of the box. Marietta, every step you take, with your head high, it makes someone else stand taller. That matters. That night, Jasmine drove alone to Booker T. Washington High School. The lot was half lit, the chain on the front gate loose enough to slip through. She sat on the bleachers by the track field, hoodie up, phone off, just to breathe. It was there she remembered the first time she spoke in public. 9th grade civic studies fair. She'd written a piece called Why Representation is Not Optional. Back then, it was a school assignment. Now it was a mission, and the mic was still in her hands. Everyone laughed when 9th grade Jasmine read the title of her speech out loud. Why Representation is Not Optional. Not because it was funny, but because she said it like it was law. That fire hadn't gone anywhere, but the cost had grown. Back at the hotel, Theo was buried in call sheets and polling tabs. Theo, you're pulling 10 points higher with independents, even in Texas districts you've never campaigned in. He looked stunned. Theo continued. Something's shifting. Jasmine walked in wearing a hoodie, hair pulled back, face bare, no makeup, no performance. Jasmine, polls don't mean anything if we're not changing lives. I'm not here to trend. I'm here to do something. Theo looked up, something quiet and certain in his eyes. Theo, you already are. But Jasmine didn't buy into the high. Not completely. She knew better. What mattered wasn't how loud it got. It was how deep it went, and how much risk she was really willing to take. The next morning outside her hotel, a small group of students waited. No media, no signs, just presence. One of them, a girl with blue braids and a notebook in her arms, stepped forward. Blue braids, softly. I want to go into politics. Jasmine bent to meet her eyes. Jasmine, then you better be ready to outwork everyone in the, room. The girl nodded. Jasmine added. Jasmine, continued. And don't let them scare you quiet. She meant it. But she also knew. What was coming next wasn't just about fear. It was about whether the people who believed in her would still be standing when the pressure peaked. The invitation came in plain. Subject line. Texas Southern University Student Coalition. Invitation. No formal headers. No PR filters. Just a short paragraph from Raymond McDuff, Senior President of the Black Student Leadership Council, Theo, reading aloud. They said, we don't want her as a headline. We want her as a voice. That's it. Jasmine, chewing a cold wrap between meetings, paused. Jasmine, when's the last time someone asked to hear me without trying to turn it into content? Theo smiled. Theo, you should go. She did. 2 days later, Jasmine walked onto the stage at Texas Southern. No cameras, no teleprompters, no handlers in her ear. Just a mic and 400 students, packed into aisles, sitting cross-legged on the floor, phones down, eyes locked in. Raymond stepped to the mic and introduced her with one sentence. Raymond, she didn't flinch, she didn't fold, so we're here to listen. The applause shook the walls, not for a politician, for someone who felt like theirs. Jasmine took the mic, paused, scanned the room. Young faces, fired up, burned out, hungry for something real. Jasmine, you've probably heard my name more in the last week than ever before. I'm not gonna lie. I didn't ask for any of this. I didn't expect to be in the middle of a firestorm. But I've never walked away from heat. Scattered applause. She paced. Jasmine continued. I've been called dramatic, too passionate, told to wait my turn, told to soften my tone, told to respect a status quo that never respected me. She stopped, Jasmine, firm. And every time they said that, it wasn't about what I said. It was about who I was when I said it. Now they were with her, locked in. Jasmine. I didn't come here to preach. I came here to remind you. Your voice already has weight, whether they tell you it does or not. A young woman in the second row cupped her hands around her mouth. Young woman. Say that again. Jasmine smiled. Jasmine, amplified. Your voice already has weight. The room echoed it back. What followed wasn't a lecture. It was a conversation. For 40 minutes, she answered real questions. No script. A student near the back raised his hand. Student, how do you keep going when they're coming for your job, your character, even your safety? Jasmine didn't dodge. She took a breath and answered honestly. Jasmine didn't sugarcoat it. Jasmine, you build a tribe. You build habits. You sleep when you can. And you remember. The mission's always bigger than your feelings. A student near the back, barely old enough to vote, raised a hand. Student, what if we don't feel heard? Jasmine, without missing a beat. Make noise anyway. Shake the floor until they have to feel you. The Q&A didn't just turn into a rally. It became something else. A spark. By the end, students were crying, hugging, signing up for internships they hadn't even considered that morning. That night, clips of her talk hit the internet. Not polished press footage, but shaky handheld, videos from student phones, and that's what made them stick. One 47-second clip went viral. Text overlay. They tried to silence her. She made them listen louder. 12 hours later, 4.3 million views. The country was watching again. In Ohio, a former public defender, Kalila Moreno, watched the clip with her daughter. She sent Jasmine a message. Kalila, via DM. My daughter didn't want to vote. She watched you today. Now she's registering. Thank you for making it real again. Cable anchors who once skimmed over her name were now leading with it. She wasn't just a congresswoman. She was a voice. But Jasmine didn't mistake momentum for safety, and neither did Theo. Back at the hotel, he sat on the bed, scrolling their inbox. Theo, we've got speaking requests from Philly, Oakland, Phoenix, Minneapolis, all within 48 hours. Jasmine rubbed her eyes, exhausted but steady. Jasmine, we're not going everywhere. We're going where the ground shifts. Theo looked up. Theo. And where's that? Jasmine. Where people are tired of whispering. But every voice that rose with hers raised the stakes, and the blowback was coming. It wasn't the first. Time Trump tried to walk something back. But this time, it wouldn't wash. The clip of him threatening to jail Jasmine had been replayed so often, late-night hosts were running it in cold opens. The jokes were easy. The fallout wasn't. At a rally in Omaha, Trump tried to spin it. Trump. They twist my words. I said it jokingly. You folks know a joke when you hear one, right? Some cheers. But fewer. Even his base was starting to look around before they clapped. The next morning, Fox and Friends gave it a half-hearted rinse. Angchor? Was it inappropriate? Maybe. But let's be honest. Congresswoman Crockett brought that energy herself. Even their usual spin couldn't kill the unease. It wasn't just liberals this time. It was everybody. Legal analysts stopped asking if it was dangerous. They started explaining why. On live television, Georgetown Law's professor Amanda Reese broke it down. Reese. When a former president uses the language of imprisonment against a sitting member of Congress for political criticism, that's not a joke. That's a threat. And it echoes global authoritarian tactics. That word, authoritarian, kept showing up in places Trump's team didn't expect. Conservative newsletters, AM radio, even internal RNC chatter. Behind closed doors at Mar-a-Lago, his advisors were split. One strategist, blue tie loosened, warned. Strategist. You're not losing your base, but you are losing suburban independence. They saw that clip and thought, that could be me next. Trump waved it off, pacing. Trump. They love this drama. Let 'em talk. I'll be trending by lunch. He was. But not for the reasons he wanted. The Salt Lake Tribune ran an op-ed with the headline, "This isn't how leaders talk. It's how bullies threaten." And worse for Trump. Some major donors went quiet. One hedge fund manager in Scottsdale, set to contribute $250,000, simply said, "Donor. I don't want my name tied to this circus." While Trump scrambled, Jasmine kept moving. She appeared on The Daily Show, not to defend herself, but to talk policy, school safety, voting access, judicial accountability. Trevor Noah. You don't seem rattled. You seem focused. Jasmine. Because if one threat could derail me, I was never really in the fight. The internet lit up. Memes from the town hall resurfaced. Her expression the moment Trump made the threat, now captioned, "Unbothered." Next question. At a Starbucks in Wichita, Kansas, a middle-aged white woman, Heidi, turned to her co-worker. Heidi. I didn't even know who she was before, but now, she's the only one who doesn't sound like they're reading from a script. Meanwhile, Jasmine's team turned the threat into action. They drafted the Elected Officials Protection Act, a tightly written bill to penalize threats made by government officials against other public servants. No fluff, no partisan bait. Just teeth. It wouldn't pass easily, but that wasn't the point. At the bill's announcement, she stood flanked by 5 colleagues, 3 Democrats, 1 Republican, 1 Independent. Jasmine. We're not passing this for ourselves. We're passing it so the next person who speaks truth to power won't have to wonder if it'll cost them their freedom. Behind her, Theo leaned toward a staffer and whispered, eyes wide, voice low. Theo. She's not a headline anymore. She's a movement. She flipped the script on him. Live in real time. The media narrative shifted almost instantly. It wasn't Crockett versus Trump anymore. It was power on trial. Cable shows reframed the conversation. What are the limits of presidential speech? Is bullying a form of abuse of power? Editorial boards found themselves cornered, forced to choose. Defend a threat or defend the First Amendment. And Trump? He couldn't make it through a single rally without reporters asking about her. The frustration started showing. In Phoenix, while ranting about the media, he snapped, "Trump, she's not even important. I made her famous." That clip exploded online. Someone posted beneath it, "And she used it to pass a bill. That's power." But it was no longer about what Trump said. It was about what Jasmine did with it. She turned every hit into fuel, every attack into action. It started with a letter, official, typed, hand-delivered. The House Oversight Committee was requesting her appearance at a public hearing on political retaliation and abuse of institutional power. Not as a witness under investigation, but as the central voice in a national reckoning. Theo read the letter twice before handing it over. Theo, they're not just asking you to testify, they're asking you to define what happens next. Jasmine stared at the seal on the envelope, straightened her shoulders. Jasmine, then let's make it count. The hearing was set for Tuesday morning in Washington. By 4 a.m., the chamber was packed. Journalists, students, policy wonks, security posted at every exit. The air smelled like old wood and rising tension. Her mother, Marietta, sat quietly in the front row. The chairman, a centrist from Oregon with a reputation for neutrality, opened the floor. Chairman, Congresswoman Crockett, thank you for being here today. Please proceed. Jasmine adjusted the mic, her voice steady, spine straight. Jasmine, I wasn't going to come here and relive a moment meant to intimidate me, but then I realized this hearing isn't about my discomfort. It's about how easily we excuse dangerous behavior when it comes from powerful men. Murmurs rippled across the room. She continued, unwavering. Jasmine, imagine a workplace where a colleague can publicly say, maybe we'll lock her up, and nothing happens. No rebuke, no accountability. Just spin. Now ask yourself, what if it wasn't me? What if it was someone with less protection, less support? Would we still be sitting here pretending it was a joke? Silence. Then she held up a stack of papers. She held up the stack of papers. Jasmine, these are copies of threatening messages sent to my personal email, my office address, since the town hall. Some say, it's just words. But words have weight. They echo in your hallway at night. They make your staff double-check the locks. They make your mother ask if you're safe. This fear is real. This danger is real. And if we allow that to become normal, we've normalized tyranny. A Republican committee member cleared his throat. Congressman Horseman leaned into his mic. Horseman, Congresswoman, with all due respect, aren't you politicizing this moment for personal gain? She didn't blink. She locked eyes with him. Jasmine, I didn't bring politics into this. The former president did, on national television, and I answered with truth. Gasps, a few scattered claps, quickly silenced by the gavel. From the side hallway, Theo mouthed one word. Perfect. An hour later, after follow-up questions and statements from two other lawmakers who'd faced similar harassment, the energy in the chamber shifted. Even those who didn't like her couldn't unhear what she'd said. When she stepped into the hallway, reporters swarmed. She didn't stop. Outside, a small crowd had gathered. Not chanting, not protesting, just present. A man in a wheelchair held a sign. Your voice helped me find mine. She walked over, shook his hand. The next morning, the headlines weren't about Trump's rebuttal, which by then had grown repetitive, desperate. They were about the hearing. Crockett shifts conversation from threats to accountability. The New York Times ran an editorial. Silence is no longer an option. Donations surged. But what stood out weren't the numbers. It was the notes, a retired school principal in Arizona. I disagree with most of your policies, but I respect what you stood for. A young mom in Utah. Thank you for reminding me that courage isn't loud. It's steady. At the University of Michigan, a student-run blog wrote, "This was her moment, and she didn't blink. Even inside Congress, things started to move. Lawmakers, once too cautious to speak up, began requesting protections. A new bipartisan working group formed, focused on the safety of public servants. But Jasmine didn't claim victory. In a quiet meeting with Theo later that week, she summed it up simply. Jasmine, this isn't a win. It's a warning shot. If we don't hold the line here, we'll lose the whole map." Theo nodded. Theo. "Then we keep walking." But she knew the truth. The map was already redrawing, and this time, she wasn't following it. She was helping sketch the next line. 3 weeks later, she stood on the front steps of a small community center in Durham, North Carolina. Not her district, not on her schedule, but the building's director, a former lunchroom manager named Gerald McCoon, had left her a voicemail. The folks here need to see someone who doesn't blink. So she showed up. No press, no entourage, just folding chairs, a mic stand wrapped in duct tape, and 50 people inside, many of whom didn't even know she was coming until they walked through the door. She didn't give a speech. She asked a question. "Jasmine, when was the last time you felt heard?" For 90 minutes, she listened. To a retired warehouse worker who hadn't voted in a decade. To a single dad working night shifts while raising 3 kids. To a high school senior who said speaking up felt like asking to be punished. "Jasmine, I get it. I've lived it. But I also know silence doesn't protect you. It just makes the lies louder." By now, she was everywhere. Magazine covers, graduation speeches, sermons. But she wasn't chasing attention. She was moving with intention. Back in D.C., she launched a non-profit, the Unmuted Project, a national support network for public servants, organizers, and everyday people facing political retaliation or intimidation. Legal aid, media training, mental health support, no fluff, just tools. Their first billboard went up in Detroit. Your voice isn't a threat, it's a right. Small text, the Unmuted Project. Theo walked into her office with the latest donor numbers. 1,000 new donors in 58 hours, most under 30. Jasmine leaned back in her chair. "Jasmine, it's not about me anymore," Theo smiled. "Theo, it never really was. Even some critics started walking it back. One radio host in Nashville, who'd mocked her after the town hall, retracted his comments on air." Radio host. "I didn't get it." Then I watched the full hearing. I was wrong. Not everyone came around. Some still scoffed, still deflected, still dismissed. And that was fine. Jasmine wasn't after unanimous applause. She was after momentum. In her next floor speech, she didn't mention Trump once. "Jasmine, we keep making heroes out of those who abuse power, and noise out of those who resist it. Let me be clear. Speaking truth isn't noise. It's necessary, and I'll keep speaking until that no longer needs explaining." Back in Shreveport, Marietta watched from her living room. She didn't clap. She just whispered, "That's my baby," and turned off the TV. At schools, Jasmine had visited. Students began forming their own chapters of the Unmuted Project. No waiting for permission. They organized panels, workshops, storytelling nights. At one in Milwaukee, a 16-year-old girl named Asha stood up. "Asha, I used to be scared to talk about the things I saw in my neighborhood. Not anymore. Because now I know. Speaking doesn't make me weak. It makes me real." Jasmine saw the clip on her phone in the back seat of a car, heading to the airport. She watched it twice. Then again, she didn't cry, but she smiled. A quiet, knowing smile that said everything. Theo glanced over. Theo, you see what you did? She shook her head. Jasmine, I see what they did. I just said what I needed to when it counted. Her phone buzzed, a message from a colleague. They're pushing to name a bill after you. She replied, name it after all of us who refused to be quiet. In the end, the threat meant to silence her lit a fire that ignited 100 other voices. That was her legacy. Not that she clapped back, not that she made headlines, but that she reminded the country of one truth. Power doesn't live in a title. It lives in the courage to speak when you're expected to stay silent. And in that truth, Jasmine Crockett wasn't just unshaken, she was unstoppable.